Hello, everybody. Welcome to the PixelPlay Podcast. My name is Adam, aka CS Radical. Joined with me today is Mr. Jin and Chris, and the illustrious, I'm looking at the wrong side, the illustrious JRPG King, Kaylan, not here today. So, he's missing. I decided to, if you're watching on video, you already know what's happening. If you're listening to this on audio, his picture has been replaced by the little baby king from Final Fantasy My Life as a King, a long-forgotten Wii game that most people have forgotten for good reasons because it's not that great. I was very addicted to that game back in the day, but that was not for the right reasons looking back on it. But
Our
Chris,
king is
how
missing.
are you doing today?
I'm doing good. Gaming wise, I've been keeping up a little bit with Cult of the Lamb. I've taken out another of the main bosses and stuff, but I'm still playing it. I don't have anything new really to add to the game. I actually died for the first time. The game kind of was picking up a little bit in difficulty and stuff, which is good. Still loving it. It's such an interesting game. I'll talk more about it when I'm done. And if anybody wants to hear anything about this, previous episodes where Kaylan's talking about it, he has said anything and everything about this game, so I won't have anything new to add. Excuse me, but I did play a new game, which has just been recently put on Game Pass. I think it's actually been in early access for a while, and it's called The Wandering Village. I had felt like a city sim builder kind of game. I find those very relaxing, and sometimes I just really, really want to play one. And there's lots of different ones that seem to be coming out, which is kind of cool. This one's even more interesting than I was expecting because you're a group of settlers on a planet that is now poisonous. The planet is not habitable anymore. You just can't be there. But there's this giant, brachiosaurus-looking animal. It's called an onbu or something like that. Conveniently, it is a massive animal that stands above the poison in the world and just happens to grow a flat piece of stone on its back, which is pretty interesting. So you, as the settlers, decide to get on the back of this animal and make your village there. The thing is massive. You're obviously very small, being human-sized. But it's interesting because there's the normal city building stuff there. You have to build huts for people to live in, build kitchens for them to use, and all of that kind of stuff. Gather wood, gather stone, resources for building more stuff. Very different in the sense this won't have money. This is more about resources, where other games it was taxes and money and stuff. But for the most part, the game is very straightforward and very, very good, very cool art style, where all the people are actual cartoon drawings. But the reason this is very interesting is because as you zoom out in the game, you actually then have to manage the actual animal itself. You actually have to get it to trust you. So because when you get to a certain spot, it might be where you can go left or right. And left is a desert and right is a forest. And whatever your farm you're growing, you might have to actually completely switch out your farm if you go in the desert because it's too hot to grow the beets that you're growing. And if you go right and go into the forest, well, then maybe you'll have to grow a different, again, vegetable or find a different way to gather water and all that kind of stuff. So you actually need to get trust with the animal. You need to feed it. If it does get poisoned when it sleeps in the wrong area, it can still get sick. You have to actually build a building that's kind of like a doctor for the animal. It's very interesting because you're managing your village, but you're also literally trying to take care of this thing that you live on. Because if it's unhappy with you and it starts to shake its back a lot or anything like that, it might actually just destroy your buildings and everything. So it's a very interesting way of doing a city sim. I played through and I beat the main mode. It's in early access, so it still just has kind of a tutorial, normal, and extreme mode kind of thing. But basically, if you can survive for 100 days, it lets you know, hey, you can now build this shrine. You build that shrine, and for right now, that's when the game kind of ends, because there's, again, early access, there's nothing else really to do. You can keep playing, it's just, there's not really any point to. You get to build the last final building, and the idea is, I guess, you live in happiness and peace and all that. So I did do that. I very much enjoyed this game. It only takes probably 10 hours to get through that if you play on a normal difficulty. But again, there is extreme, and I think there's even endless, where it just, the purpose is you go and you can just keep going. So yeah, I love these kind of games, and there's already another one coming, I think tomorrow on Game Pass, which is same idea, but it's steampunk, and all the buildings you build are actually floating in the sky with like steampunk propellers and stuff. So I'm very excited to even give that one a go in a couple days, or whenever I feel like I actually need kind of like a more sit at your computer cozy kind of game. So
Yeah, I mean,
highly
it's kind of neat,
suggested.
like, because you don't usually see a lot of them in this aspect where it's more of a fantasy level. Like, if you see fantasy, generally it's more just medieval setting. It's not really
Yeah.
going much further than that. And as you said, with the steampunk one that you're looking into as well, like, those don't tend to happen too often. They're usually just city sims, or they're, like castle builders, like stuff like that. Like, you're not going into this, what's almost like Studio Ghibli level of like a setting here.
It is very much so. I actually did think of that when I was first playing it last week. The characters themselves, not as much, but like the buildings, the setting, all of it, very Studio Ghibli. Very, very.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
definitely
it's
comes off like
really good.
sort of a whimsical, like kids cartoon almost in a way.
Yeah, yeah, very much so. But with actual like, oh, you just walked through a poison cloud. Half your village is poisoned. Sorry, you didn't heal them fast enough. Everyone died. Like, it just it goes hard when
So
it
an
wants.
80s kids show.
An 80s kid show. Yes, very much so. But yeah, that's kind of what I played alongside with a bit of Cult of the Lamb. But other than that, I haven't really gamed a lot compared to normal, which is very interesting just because life gets busy sometimes. So what
Yeah,
about
I
you?
mean, for me, it's going to be very interesting. I'm going to take this moment also to, I should have done it at the top of the show, but we kind of just got into our intro stuff, or our, what we've been doing lately. But I got to immediately start by thanking our fans and basically our subscribers, because we doubled in subs in the last month. We finally hit 100. Our goal was to hit 100 by the end of the year, and we've done that. And it's August, so we finally hit a jump. Now, granted, it seems to be mostly off of one video, so I'm not gonna take too much credit for that. But
You're
I
right. I'll
assume
take
just based on the views on this channel, I think now we're just a trail show. So I don't know what we're talking about. I think this is just the Pixel Play Trails cast, or and my name is CS Trailsicle, and but
I'm Trails is in my backlogical.
oh geez, but yeah,
Oh, that's
like,
horrible.
thanks to everybody who's subbed recently. I hope that a couple of you are probably checking out this show. I mean, I know a couple of people who checked out our the last time me and Chris were doing a show without Kaylan, when we had a JRPG episode. That seems to have gotten some views. So apparently, the JRPG King doesn't lie. As soon as he appears into the ether, we're getting more views. So clearly, the right answer is to just nonstop talk about JRPGs.
Yeah.
Now, I like to say we're going to do that again. We're not quite going to do it, but I am going to mention that I have now finished Trails of Reverie. So I am now completely caught up to everything that's localized. It's nowhere like, I literally, in our Discord, which by the way you should also go and join. Again, link at the bottom of the video here. Otherwise, Linktree / PixelPlay Podcast. But we were talking about I guess like the order of Trails games, and I put my full order. Reverie is way at the bottom. Now, people say, "Oh, you must not think Reverie's that good." No, that's actually the opposite. It's just the Trails games are so good that Reverie, being a game that is mostly fan service and like small, shorter stories, doesn't exactly have the same hit that the other games do. And it goes the same with Sky Third, or Sky. What do they call it? I think it's Final Chapter, Sky FC, I believe it is. So those two games, Reverie and Sky FC, they're at the bottom of my list, not because they're bad, but because they just don't have the same value in terms of storytelling that the other games do provide, because those games are designed to be this long form storytelling, where Reverie and Sky FC were more of along the lines of, hey, the main story that we were telling is done. We just need something to move from this arc to the next. So here's just a fun little like thing in between. And this game doesn't hide the fact that it's not trying to do anything too over the top, like in terms of it is literally being over the top, but it's not trying to throw everything it has to bring it a lot of emotional value. There were moments where I got a little emotional about it, but that's because it's, again, finishing off some loose ends that have been, in some cases, 10 games long. Like, here's the crazy thing. The first time in this series, since Sky, a character that you play as is becoming a parent. There have been marriages, there have been even adoptions, but there has been no one getting pregnant or becoming a father that wasn't, like an NPC. So this is the first time where we've had even that happen. So like that's a big deal. We've had a few other engagements started up. There's relationships that are starting to finally build. You see people starting to go their separate ways, figuring out what they want to do in life. So there's a lot of that stuff. But the story that Reverie tells is one that I can only describe in a similar manner to what the Citadel DLC of Mass Effect is, where it is trying to be like decent, but it's also knowing that it's pulling some Jean-Claude Van Damme level plot devices in there. There are fucking clones. There's like fucking interdimensional shit. Like they do not hide the fact that this is not, you know, a typical like political struggle with all these other things. There's a moment in the intro, and again, like most people are going to say this is spoiler-ish, but like realistically, you don't know what the context of any of this is. You think at the beginning it's going to be another like political struggle thing, and then not too long into the story, because I did mention how the guy with the mask, they reveal it, and it wasn't exactly who I was expecting at all. And as soon as they do that, you go, oh no, we're going into like cheesy action movie storytelling now. All right, we'll see how this goes. And it does that a lot. There's definitely nothing I'm going to pull from the story in this game compared to the other Cold Steel games or Azure or Zero or Sky. But what they do is it's fun. And as I said the last time we were talking last week, I love what they did with the dungeon that can reset itself and becomes more of like your grinding area. I still have my complaints. I think that they could have done a little more with it in terms of like what it gives you, because I realized after a certain point, because there are essentially 7 levels to it. By the time that I got to the second or third, I started realizing that I had spent too much time in it, so that the ceiling stones that are almost like gacha games where they can provide you like materials, accessories for your characters, costumes even sometimes. I may have already blown my load by about the second floor, because every time I was open these stones, they were all things that I had. So I went, oh, okay, well, maybe when I go to the next floor, there'll be more stuff. And then you realize, nope, no, I just played this too much now. All right. Because, I mean, every floor has a few things. There are these red spheres that unlock mini games. There are blue spheres that unlock these things called daydreams, which are just these really small short stories that either tie up loose ends for a character, or it's just like a funny aside that do things like, there's one story about how like one minor character gets her airship and it's just a cavalcade of dumb things that happen. Just the ship ends up in her lap. It's stuff like that, but then also at the same time there are like some serious like emotional closure stories that happen in there too, to tie up some loose ends that haven't been completed yet. And not even just with Cold Steel, we could be talking all the way into Sky too. So they do a good job of taking things, multiple games in the past, and finally going, all right, this person's done. They're now going to move on and do something else. They'll probably show up somewhere down the line. Who knows? We're not going to tell you. We're not going to tip the hand at all. But like, we've put a finite end to these people. And that's something that I appreciate a lot that they did there. Aside from that, my one biggest complaint is you have a game that is being hailed as the Avengers Endgame of Trails. There are significant characters missing. Not every party member from the series is there. And not only that, I feel really bad for the characters in the Sky and Azure Zero games. They get almost no love. If you didn't buy the DLC for like the summer packs or the Eastern like samurai garb wear that they brought in, the Zero people get almost no costumes. Sky literally gets nothing. So like Cold Steel retains all the costumes that they had from like the previous 4 games, and a couple extra ones. If you were looking for like Estelle from Sky to have like some wacky costumes, no, she gets a towel from the hot springs. That's about it. And like almost every character has a hot spring towel by the end of the game. So like they're not abnormal. It's kind of weird that characters that have been around that long don't even get like anything. I know that in the old games they don't have like alternate outfits, because obviously this being in the portable days, they didn't have like a lot of DLC back then, whereas Cold Steel obviously has a lot of DLC going for it. And also now with the way the games are a lot more 3D, whereas the Sky, Azure, and Azure games were more like on a 2.5D, like Final Fantasy Tactics War of the Lion sort of like grid like kind of setting. They didn't exactly go the method of all these like extra outfits. Like, for fuck's sake, some of the girls have like 20 outfits almost with how much stuff they have. Granted, not all of them are exactly like life changing. Some of them are just their school outfits with slight color changes. So it's not always like, you know, they're all completely different, but there are some that definitely get more love than others. And that's my one complaint. I would love to have like some characters that are supposed to be this like super serious. Like there's one guy who is this one-armed badass like swordsman, like one of the strongest men in the entire continent. No costumes, not even like a funny mascot one to really put things off. Like, I would pay for this. I already did with the special edition I got. Give me some more stuff. And this is the last game. Some of these characters are never going to be playable characters again. Let them go out on the cheesiest whim possible, and they didn't do it. I'm so disappointed.
Yeah, that is kind of disappointing if they didn't give each character like, because normally if you're going to do DLC, like, and there's however many characters, when you release, it's like everybody gets one, and it's kind of like, here's the school outfit pack, and every single character has their school outfit.
Yeah, like their claim is going to be that, well, there's a lot of accessories that we offered. Like there is a shit ton of accessories, but a lot of them, unless you're like in your second playthrough, you don't use because they just look off. Because like
yeah.
I don't want a big mascot like head on them. I don't need somebody walking around with a fucking like little Japanese kid's backpack on or anything. There's also, I don't know what they call them again, but they're like the big samurai flags that like people would carry into battle. And there's a couple of them that literally just have a character portrait on it. So it's just being like, I'm shameless, like that. Putting my flag down here is my waifu. And there's also like I guess like automatopoeia, like Batman automatopoeia, like text bubbles that you can put above characters. That's also one that I'm like, unless you're in photo mode, what's the purpose of these? So like a lot of them just aren't applicable. So I would have rather them just do more outfits, and especially like even just some slight colorations, or even just like, okay, well here's so and so without a shirt, like even simple things like that. It's like, all right, let the man just go topless, let his bulging muscles go on there so he can flex his shit and kick some ass. And for a lot of characters, they don't even do that. So I'm so disappointed. I will say though, there is one secret character that you can unlock in the post game who I went, oh fuck, I'm gonna have fun with this guy. And by the end of it, he had a strength rating of over 6,000 points. For reference scope, the person next to him was only at 4,500.
Wow. Okay.
So this guy walked in the battle and just went, what? And that was it. And like I said too, when I was talking about it in the video that I did about how you can overpower, oh, you can overpower in this game. Oh, you can overpower. Because they take the overpowering gems and put them a level higher than that.
Oh, wow.
So here is what my main character, not the guy with 6,000 strength, I put all my points in just seeing how high I could make a strength rating is. The main character that I had here, here's what he does. So he has materia on him that the first turn he attacks, it deals 1.5 times extra damage than a normal attack does. So that's already a good start. He also has an item that for every person he kills, he gains his ability points back. His highest ability that is a big area clear is 80 points. As long as I kill 3 people with this attack, he gets all of that back. And because the damage that he does is 1.5 times, if this is against a smaller group of enemies and he just one-shots it all, I didn't lose any points. I just got all that back. And you think, well, that's already overpowering enough. Oh, no, hold on. I have 2 more things that I've added to him. So after every turn, his attack power goes up by in increments. So if he doesn't kill anything yet, the next time he attacks, it's going to be stronger. And it's going to keep climbing. And the other thing I have on him is that the more enemies that he attacks during a battle, so if there's one person, it's not going to do that much. But if there happen to be 7 enemies in a fight, his damage goes up 10% each. What? To a maximum of like, I think it's like 60 or 70%. So face the idea of facing 7 small fry enemies with an attack that has the range to take all 7 of them. And he and if he one-shots every single one of them, you end the battle in one turn. You get all your ability points back, and also with the way the battle system runs, depending on what you do, certain things can also add to an EXP modifier. So if you do like a double kill, it gets you an extra modifier. If you do a certain number of chain attacks, you get that. If you do a counter, you get that. If you literally end a battle in less than, I think it's 4 turns, you get a modifier. So if you kill 7 enemies all at once without taking any damage and do it in one turn, you get quite a bit of XP on top of what you normally would. Instead of it being 1.0, you have like, I don't know, like 2.4 times experience for that fight. So if you're facing enemies that happen to be higher level or around your level, yeah, just rake in those points too while you're at it.
Wow.
And that's one character.
So
I have a mage that's broken. I have a person that has 100% evasion. So if anybody tries to attack them with a normal attack, crafts and magic don't count. But if they just try to normal attack them, they will automatically dodge. And if they dodge, they do critical damage in return because of another piece that I put on them. And I also have another piece on top of that that also raises critical damage by another 100%. So you eventually just find ways to make characters that you're just like, I'm sorry, you're going to lose this fight. And the last funny thing I got to say is, there's a weird thing about a game that has you playing with over 40 characters in terms of party members in total as they pull all the games together. It's really weird when you go into some sort of a dungeon and it's a bunch of you and there's one person waiting for you. I'm not good at math, but if I walk into a room and there's 30 of us, I don't care if this guy's the strongest in the world. You can't watch for 30 people. So every time I walk in there, I know in battles only 4 people go into the fight, guys. I know. But still, I love the fact that somebody is going like, you guys think you can defeat fate? And we all look at this person going, look, you look pretty strong, but you can't stop 30 blades from trying to puncture you, okay? Look,
that is very true.
If 30 of us cast fire at you, you can't dodge them all. So from a story perspective, it really does make me laugh when like you're staring at like a final boss and there's 40 of you standing there and you're going, you can't defeat me. And we're going, mathematically.
We won as soon as we walked in the room.
At least in the older games, it was like, okay, this person's the strongest in the world and there's 6 of you, but you're also like pretty junior fighters. So you're not exactly well trained yet. It's like the Darth Vader against a bunch of small fleeting like rebel scum, Whereas by the end of Reverie, you have people who have been war-torn for years, guys who have ridiculous overpowered abilities, and in some cases, some of your party members are some of the strongest people on the goddamn continent. And you got one person staring at you in the face being like, you can't defeat me. And I go, fucking watch us.
That's fantastic. It's so
it's
like, JRPG logic.
from an actual like gameplay perspective, it's perfectly fine. Like if you're someone who's played the Trails games, even if you only play Cold Steel, you're still gonna get a pretty decent and satisfying conclusion. The post game like secret ending, I thought was meh, but the same happened with Sky FC. It was again, they weren't exactly putting together like a game or a story that was throughout the entire game that had been building for extra games and stuff. So we didn't have the same value, but like the main ending of Reverie I still thought was pretty good because it was a big closing point. And now that there's a bit of lead into what's going to be the next game, which I know is called Kuro no Kiseki. I think that translates to Trails in the Dark, if I'm not mistaken, but I may be wrong. They've already got 2 games out in Japan. I imagine we'll see the first one of these probably sometime late next year, early 2025. So I'm pretty stoked for that, and it's another graphical overhaul. It's another complete change to the battle system, so it's going to be a nice reset. We already know of one character that's carrying over, at least to some aspect, but other than that, like it's pretty much been implied that there's not going to be a lot of carryover right away, so it's going to feel like an actual brand new arc. And given that is taking place on an entirely different nation that has always been looked at as the enemy of everyone, it's going to be a very interesting perspective too, and I honestly can't wait. And again, it just makes me say, go back and watch the video if you're a Trails fan, and if you aren't already, take a look at Trails. And like I said in the video, as long as you start with a 1 in one of the 3 arcs, whether it's the original Sky, whether it's Trails from Zero or Trails of Cold Steel 1, pick one and start. And if you feel like flipping back and forth, if you want to try a different one, or if you get a little bit lost and you want to try something else, like go for it. Because I do think that right now, like other than Persona, which does I think one-time game storytelling the best, Trails is, in my opinion, without question, the masters of storytelling right now in JRPGs, and I don't think it's close. But that's also because I don't think very many companies today would take the risk that Falcom does with making a series that, let's be honest, is not the easiest to get into because it is a time sink now, especially if you want to play from the beginning.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't wait to finally jump in there soon. I know I keep saying that, but I've got
And
it
Sky
installed.
is Sky, because I know you were looking to start with Sky. Sky is a pretty damn good start because it's one of those games that has a very good whimsical nature, but also knows when it's time to tip its hand, and it has one of the more surprising endings I've played in a game in quite some time. So it definitely does a good job of sinking its claws in by the time the end of the first one comes in. Because if you finish the first game and you don't feel like playing another Trails game after that game, it's not for you. If that game doesn't do enough for you, I don't know what will. So it's one of those things where it's like, that's a great game to start with. I also go to the realm of suggesting people Cold Steel as well, but I also go in with the notion of saying you gotta be anime trained for Cold Steel, because Cold Steel has a much more anime tropey level stuff. Because it's definitely done more of like what Fire Emblem turned into, where it became a lot more of the waifu bait stuff. Because, I mean, Trails from Zero and Azure definitely do a little bit more of it, but Cold Steel definitely tips its hand because literally in the first like hour, you have the girl falls on you and her breasts are almost in your face kind of trope. So, that game is unquestionably like tipping its hand, being like, yeah, we're being pretty anime with this arc, okay? So just be warned.
Yeah, I'm good with that. I'll get there.
I mean, look, we all watch Dragon Ball. We've seen weirder shit.
Oh, God, yeah. Wow, yeah.
Especially Dragon Ball.
Yeah.
Not even Z, just Dragon Ball.
So inappropriate, but fantastic at the same time.
Well, look, we'd be lying if we said we didn't like things a little bit inappropriate. We are like basically overgrown children at this point.
100%. Absolutely.
And because I can't think of a better segue, speaking of children, well, let's go back to our childhood, because our big topic of the day, as you probably guessed by the title of this episode, is, well, the fact that I think we've even had this conversation before, either on Cartridge and Quarters back in the day or on the PixelPlay podcast, that, well, if you want to play old games and you don't want to break the law, you don't want to sail the high seas, it's not easy. And the video game, oh my God, why am I blanking on the name of it? The video game History Foundation, there we go. I want to say History Museum. And I had to go double check, but I'm like, I don't trust myself, so I'm not going to flub this right off the bat. They've put out a study. This was done like maybe a month ago, so we could have hit on it then, but we had other topics that we thought were interesting at the time, and we just kind of put it off, and now it seems like a better time than any to talk about it. But they put out data, empirical evidence that basically says that 87% of all video games released previous to 2010, which is their metric of calling it a classic video game, is not available for purchase legally. There's no, unless you're going to the secondhand market, which, by the way, these days is a fucking statistical impossibility. And even if you can, you better be ready to fork out some coin because it ain't cheap.
Yeah,
unless you're going to fill out your EA Sports collection where they're all $5. I looked recently because me and a friend were talking about games like Suikoden or Ease. I looked at Suikoden 5, which is the one of the 3 PlayStation 2 games I'm missing. It's $150 right now. I looked at the copy of Mega Man Legends 2 that I own on PlayStation 1 in box. Now, granted, I'm sure the disc isn't in the greatest condition, but in the box, if I wanted to purchase it right now, it's more than $250 for one game.
Insane. It's insane.
And even small fry, like if you want to buy, like I'm gonna pull up. Give me like one more common game, Chris. Like what's something you can think of that's like, let's go like Super Nintendo era. Give me just like any random game.
Super Mario RPG.
That's a good one, since that's relevant, since it's getting remade recently. That one, I'm actually shocked on how expensive this is. This is genuinely surprising to me. I'm assuming this is just the cartridge only. Yep, this is just cartridge only. This is on a website that I usually shop for retro stuff back in the day when I did. for just a copy of the cartridge for Mario RPG, 159.99 Canadian.
Wow.
I thought it'd be less
Yeah.
than that because you figured there was more printed. So I'm gonna just, out of curiosity, go to Super Mario World. Yeah, that's still like $49.99, which is not. It's not terrible, but it's still a lot for a game that's been out forever and is a pretty commonly played game that's on a bunch of different, like collections, whether online or in physical form, like the SNES Classic.
Yeah, like that you can get in a lot of places, even on just the Switch Online service. So for it to still be $50, that one is
Yeah, like even Super
surprisingly
Mario All
good.
Stars, which printed a fuckload of them back in the day, is $39.99. So
That's crazy. Yeah, I figured Mario RPG would be a little higher just because up until
I
the
didn't think
announcement of
150
the
high
remake.
though. Damn, I thought like
No,
maybe like
no.
80, 90.
Yeah, yeah, I would have figured that it basically kept its value because that's what it would have cost to buy back then.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so it's
that's
become very
crazy.
apparent that if you're looking to play anything aside from the major releases that will get put on different platforms, especially Nintendo, because a lot of people's nostalgia will immediately gravitate to Nintendo because that's where most of us grew up with. It's not possible. To the fact that they did a study, like I said, 87% overall. The crazy stat to me is that there is no period in history of a 5-year period that has more than 20% available to the public legally. Not even 2005, 2009, not even the most recent possible one has more than 20%. That's
Wow.
incredibly insane to me. And if you go anything past 85, it is basically nothing. And if you want, like, I'm looking at the graph right now, there's a little bit in the 70s, but as soon as you go past 75, they don't even have a blue bar anymore because the number is so low. So it's
Wow.
just at a fact that most games, I mean, it's obvious too, like how many people can play, any random like Atari game these days that isn't like Pong that's been redone 1,000 times, right?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, there's like one Atari collection that I saw somewhere. I don't know if it was on Steam or something. It's like the only time I've ever seen anything, and it's only like the very specific like Pong and stuff like that that's on there.
Yeah, like when you really think about it, if you wanted to play like, I don't know, like Space Invaders, you either have to get like some random collection, or you have to hope that when you go to a convention one year, that they just happen to have a machine there because a lot of places have the arcades that have the old retro machines there.
Yeah.
Because it's not like you can buy it in most places. Now, granted, for some games like Space Invaders, there is places readily available to get that still. Same with games like Sonic the Hedgehog or Super Mario World and things like that. But for example, we talk about, on JRPGs all the time, you mentioned Ratty Out of Stories. There's
Yeah.
nowhere to get it.
No.
Nowhere. If
Nowhere.
you want to get
Even
Suikoden Tactics, which I forgot was a game back in the PS2 days, you can't get that anywhere. It's not available. It's not on any
No.
digital storefront. It's not in a. It's like, unless you want to go to a store and hope to God that they aren't going to charge you $100 for the damn thing, and even that the disc works, because God forbid you have no idea. Especially if you're buying on, like, in a store, you have a better chance of the disc being a good copy because they take care of that shit. You buy it just on Kijiji or on eBay or whatever, you have no way of knowing that thing works.
No.
If you buy a copy of Star Tropics for the NES, you have no goddamn clue if it's going to work. You hope it does because you paid God knows how much for it.
Yeah, and you're
But
not
there's no
lugging
way
an
of knowing.
NES with you to go plug it into the cigarette lighter of your car while you're in the parking lot doing the exchange. Like, you can't do that.
Yeah, it's just one of those things where, and the question always pops up, like, what do we do when it comes to this situation? And the easiest method that we always come up with is, like, there should be, whether it's a library or whether it's a museum or in this case, like the Video Game History Foundation, like, there's got to be some way to bypass the copyright laws, because that's the big crux of what it is. It's copyright laws that prevent what happens here. Because it's also the game companies themselves, because again, it's ridiculous to think this, but most of the people as a part of the ESA, the Electronic Software Association, are fucking people within the companies that belong to the video game industry. Might be a little biased in how they do things over there.
Yeah, just
So,
a little.
it's there's not an easy way to do it. It should be as simple as, if these games aren't ever going to be put on the market in any format, someone should be allowed by that point. I always go back to, it should be that if this game has not been published in a digital storefront for X amount of time, it should be of the availability of anyone and anyone, or anyone and everyone, to be able to put this up for free on some sort of service, digital service. The fact that like let's be honest, most of these companies that, you know, these games belong to are dead and gone. They're gone bankrupt. In some cases, their rights aren't even held anywhere anymore. They're just, it's gone. There's no reason that these games can't be put up anywhere. But someone somewhere is going to suddenly, like, you know, put litigation into it, and all of a sudden this stops dead in its tracks. But like, the reality is there should be a site right now that if I want to go and play Crazy Clown and Kid Land, or Crazy Kid and Clown Land, I think it is, for the Super Nintendo, because it's not available anywhere, and just play it. Just be able to download the ROM straight from. And I know everybody's going to say, well, you can already do that. You misunderstand the point. And I think Gerard the Completionist did this pretty well in his video about it, where it's not necessarily like about pirating. Because anyone like us you're listening to a podcast about video games, you probably know how to do this. You're pretty tech savvy. But for, you know, someone who is a father of, you know, in their late 40s, early 50s, who grew up with like the NES, isn't really like that much of a tech savvy person these days, but like remembers the old stuff that he used to play when he was a kid. There's nowhere to go and do that. And trying to get someone to learn how to go to and do torrenting, or trust how emulators work and figure they're not going to get viruses and have their information compromised. It's a frightening thing for them to just go into when all they really want to do is play a game that they remember when they were 6. You know, it's 100%. It's a lot to be working with.
Yeah, and I've even seen people online when they talk about this, it's like, it's easy, just build a Raspberry Pi and then upload everything to it and hook it up to the TV. It's like, yeah, like my dad played Atari when he was growing up and stuff. My dad doesn't know how to build a Raspberry Pi and configure it and get emulators and ROMs on there and set it up with the TV. There's no way that would ever happen. He'd come to me, sure, but not every dad or mom has the option of going to their kid to do this, because not everybody's a gamer. Like, that's just how it works. Just because they're a gamer doesn't mean their kids are, right?
Well, and that's why things like the NES and SNES Classic work so well, because again, and it's why I can't believe I have to explain this to people so many different times, but it's why there's like, it's not nearly as big as it used to be, in my opinion, but the PC Master Race, folks. When everybody says, oh, you should be getting a PC, why are you playing on console? And I keep having to say it, you really underestimate how many people just want to plug the fucking thing in and it works.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I don't understand why it's so complicated for people to understand that sometimes, or if they're just willfully ignorant of this fact and just decide that they just want to push, you know, what they like the most. But the same goes for even, like, emulators and ROMs aren't too difficult to understand. There are plenty of sites where you can do it from. It's not hard to figure out how to install an emulator. It's like any Windows program. But still, even to some people that aren't computer savvy, it's a little bit of work. And for some people that don't understand things, you really underestimate how afraid people are of fucking it up.
Oh, yeah.
That they just go, it's not worth the effort. I don't want to have to look too far into this. Whereas especially when it comes to installing cable, sometimes they don't even have to do it themselves. Sometimes a technician literally just comes into their house and does it for them, right? So it's not always that. There isn't a person that comes to your house and installs Virtua Boy Advance so you can play, you know, Pokemon Ruby on your computer, okay? It doesn't happen unless you have like a family member that you can share your computer with, and they can just connect to you remotely and do it for you. But even then, it's a lot to ask of the average person who isn't too deep into this. And it goes back to what I said. Why isn't there a site available where, even without an emulator, like just streaming it, like just being able to access it almost like as a YouTube video and just want to play it right then and there, and just like have some sort of bare bones like keyboard controls, or they can even on the websites just, hey, here's a few controllers that you can buy that, you know, work with this system, or give them suggestions of things, like very basic stuff with really detailed guides so that even like dumbasses can figure it out. But we don't have that. And instead what happens is, as the study says, 87% of all these classic games just vanish. They do one of two things. They're either in a massive folder of zip files that someone has torn it off the Pirate Bay, or they're on a shelf in a box, never to be opened because there are people collecting them. And that doesn't do anything for playing the video games in their truest form. They're just there. And in physical format, they're sitting on a shelf. And in these torrented versions, they're not even the games themselves. They're just data streams, right? So they're not really preserving anything. And even it just brings that question again, like, what is it about the game industry that doesn't make them want to do this at all? And it seems like it's very simple just to figure it must be money related, because it seems like there just isn't enough of a profit into them. But I still think, like, do you really think, like, for example, I don't know, like, we'll go back to the Nintendo example. Nintendo, you have a lot more than the fucking 20 ROMs that you have available right now for Game Boy Advance. What's stopping you from going, hey, let's have someone spend about 30 minutes on this to put 150 more ROMs on there, and we'll say, hey, you already have Nintendo's Online expansion, but hey, here's Nintendo Online expansion premium. Pay us another $5 a month, you get an even bigger library. You think people won't do that?
Yeah. It is crazy that how slow they're going with all of that. And I used to think like, okay, maybe it's copyright, because I do get it. If they're going to put, say, Breath of Fire on there, they got to go to Capcom, they got to get the rights, blah, 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 blah. And then how much of the Switch Online service, like how much does Nintendo pay Capcom? But it's such BS, because there's also a ton of just first party Nintendo stuff that they own. Like they have so many. Their backlog is the biggest one that exists, probably for any gaming company out there, and they refuse to put everything on there. They really
why the hell is Mario is missing not on Virtual Console? This is bullshit.
That's the only one I want. No. But yeah, and like I completely do believe it's all money. The reason is they either don't have the money or they're not sure who has the rights. So even if they have the money and want to pay for it, like I know GoldenEye was in development hell for a long time. They even made that like sweet looking remaster that looked like it was for the Xbox 360 or something. It actually looked like a good remaster versus the like Daniel Craig GoldenEye that we don't really like to talk about. But it's like, well, it was on Nintendo's system and they published it, so they have some rights. And then there's MGM, who actually owns the movie rights. And then there's Rare Studios, that's now owned by Xbox, and it used to be owned by Nintendo, and they have a bunch of the rights. And also, do you still have to pay Pierce Brosnan for his likeness? Like, there's probably so much stuff, but even that they finally figured out. But I would call that one an extreme case where it changed hands a lot. A lot of the other ones, they probably just don't even know. It's like the guy who created Xenogears on PS1 left the company, couldn't create Xenogears because Square owns the rights, and created Xenosaga, both of which are not available on any digital service whatsoever right now, which is a shame, because these are ones I definitely want to play. I would play them tomorrow. I'd drop everything I was doing. But yeah, so the rights for kind of the same series is owned by now 2 different publishers and all that kind of stuff. But there's nothing stopping Square Enix from releasing Xenogears. They own the rights. Even if they had to pay a little bit to somebody, they still would know, very easy paper trail of who needs to get paid. Let's just create it. It's like what they did with Chrono Cross. They already had the rights. Maybe pay somebody, maybe figure out a couple extra features to make people want to buy it. But it's just, either it's money or they don't want to put in the work because they feel that there's not enough money to be returned from it. Like Chrono Cross, you could see they put the least amount of effort in there. Even when they released Chrono Trigger, which is not on the Switch, where it would sell like hotcakes, not on the PlayStation or Xbox, where it would sell like hotcakes. It's only on Steam. And the reason it was on Steam is because they ported over the mobile version, and it takes like 3 seconds to do that. And they put zero effort into it, where it literally said, please, like when you went to put in Chrono's name and you could change the name, please use the phone's touchscreen to input the name. They didn't even QC it 3 minutes into the game at first to do that. So they felt like, oh, this must be easy money. People want this game. They clearly already had the rights, but they just didn't even want to put the effort in, because why would you? Because there's going to be not enough money that pays them back, or maybe just putting in no effort still gets them enough money that it's worth it. And they could do a good version of the game, but again, because of money, it's like, well, why pay to do all the extra when we'll still make enough money if we do the bare minimum? So it's always, to me, I assume it's always money. It's the money to get it made.
And like the other question that I would have to these people at the same time would be, okay, well, let's assume that it's because it's either like, oh, it's not worth the effort because, all the different rights, things that we would have to do and whatever and all this. Okay, let's assume it's not worth the trouble for you guys to do anything with it. You don't even want to put it up on a storefront. Why then, whenever somebody tries to just put it up somewhere for free, or when someone like the Video Game History Foundation try to do something like this to have some sort of a digital front for it, that immediately lawyers come into play and all of a sudden there's all this litigation? If it's not worth your time, why all of a sudden is it worth the lawyer's time?
Yeah, because lawyers aren't cheap too. So they're not paying to develop the game themselves, but they're dropping a lot of money to have these lawyers on hand, ready to drop whatever copyright strike they need to drop because, well, they don't want anyone else making it. Because what if they do decide to make it and that's going to take away from their profits,
But
even though they have no
talking
idea
about them making it. We're literally talking about a museum, a curation like standpoint, just putting this out for free, no charge, that's already not available anywhere for purchase on a digital storefront. And I say storefront like just in like a digital front, like or some sort of digital like database, because that storefront implies paying money. There's no charge. There's no money changing hands here. What's to sue over?
Yeah.
If you're not doing anything with it, what's to sue over? Well, they're using it without our permission. To do what? To do what?
Yeah,
like,
it's ridiculous.
Super Mario RPG, for example, since we're talking about it, before remake, there's nowhere to buy it. Nowhere. Nope. Unless you go to a store and pay $150 for a copy that you pray to God works. There's nowhere to get it. Nope. If it's up for free on a library digital front, that's a problem? Why? For what reason? Yeah. All of a sudden, you have people that are playing a game that you aren't making money off of anymore. Now, all of a sudden, they might go, hey, this is a cool game. Why don't we have this? And then word kind of gets around about it. Because, Mario RPG has been a big thing for forever. We all been keep talking about it. Like, man, why won't they put it up anywhere? All of a sudden, there's a remake. Boom, it's nonstop and talked about for a while. Baldur's Gate has been missing for forever, and it's one of the biggest Steam releases because people just kept talking about it. Even like if I go back to Trails, we've been talking about in the Trails community forever for Azure and Zero to get translated. It never happened, and we all assumed it was never coming. But because we wouldn't stop talking about it, eventually it finally happened. If nothing happens with your game, to any developer that would ever think of doing any sort of litigation because someone puts it up on a storefront for people to access, even if they're not charging money for it, can you please explain to me why a game that you don't want anything to do with is a bad thing if people suddenly play it and maybe show some interest into it? Because you know what that might be down the road? More fucking money for you.
Yeah, it makes no sense. I mean, these are the same companies and lawyers that are... Somebody's playing your game on YouTube and just posts clips of playing a game, which builds hype for the game. It's
Nintendo?
Not like... Yeah, and you'll just be playing that game and they'll copyright strike it, even though the person's not really making any money anyways.
I don't know if they do it as bad as they used to, but I know there was a point where you could not put gameplay up on Nintendo or for Nintendo on YouTube. I don't know if it's still the same now, but
I don't know if they're as bad now, but they definitely were the worst for a long time. You couldn't, like, I have Tears of the Kingdom. If I just wanted to make a video that I was like, hey, I like this game, guys, you should all check it out, promoting to all the people who follow me, like, Nintendo would copyright strike me because it's like, hey, whoa, you can't talk about the game. Only we can talk about the game.
It really is that idea of like, they'd rather make $1 their way than 100 with somebody else's way.
Yeah. It's like these companies aren't number one actual gamers. It seems like a lot of them are business first, games second, or maybe even games like 10th, way down the road. Like games are a way of making money, not an actual thing they're passionate about or care about.
Which, look, I honestly don't care if they're about making money. That's perfectly fine because we found that there are companies that can do that very well and also still put out good content. I mean, look at, I know some people make the joke about, it being the same stuff over and over again, but like Marvel movies for us, every time we go and see them, they're still really fun to watch. Then they make them a shit ton of money. It's a win-win. We get to win because we get to watch fun stuff. They win because they make a boatload of fucking money.
Yes. Yeah.
So like, I don't understand, like, I would understand it when it's people doing things like, I get when people are trying to release, like, and charge for these things. Like, actually, I shouldn't say that because that doesn't happen very often. But like, even the case of like when people try to remaster something, like the guy who was doing the Simpsons Hit and Run remaster but refused to release it because he knows he's going to get sued if he does.
Yeah.
It's like, why? If he's not charging money, what's the problem? And I know what the problem is in those cases. It's because someone's doing it better than them because they don't want to put the work in to actually do it properly, aka what Chrono Cross was, aka what the GTA PS2 collection ended up being.
Oh,
You know, so all of these companies want to put the bare minimum in and make their boatload of money, and someone who actually has some little bit of fucking passion will do that and do it better, so they have to put a stop to that. But that's a different story. I don't even care about that stuff right now. We're literally talking, like I said, taking the original copy of just any random game from previous to 2010. Doesn't matter which one. Doesn't matter how big it is, how small it is. And putting it somewhere that's easily accessible, easy for people to understand how to do, with instructions on how to be able to play it. With no cost. No money is exchanging hands here. And I would assume that there would have to be like, if this was ever a thing that would be done, you'd have to make sure there are no ads on this website either, because they even then like companies could be like, well, they're making ad revenue on this. Okay, so let's just assume, best case scenario, it's on a digital front. There is no money changing hands. There is no ads on these pages. There is nothing there that this company is doing. It's like a nonprofit company that's not doing anything to make money on this, aside from donations that people can give of their own volition, whether they've taken anything off this storefront or not. What's the problem then? Because if any company has a problem, they're showing one of two things. They either don't want people to play these things because they know they can make money on it doing their way, in which case, more often than not, they don't do anything with it anyway, so that's a moot point. Or two, they're just incompetent, greedy pieces of shit.
Yep. It's both. It's definitely both of those things. God, like it's so simple to fix. Like you create some legislation, just like music and like copyright when it comes to like characters that are created and stuff like that, where if that hasn't been used for a certain amount of time, it gets open to the public. And I agree, like not being able to sell it. Like if Super Mario World hasn't been remade or whatever in a long time or re-released on a current thing, yeah, of course that other random person who doesn't own it can make money on it. But there should be this, museum database basically where it automatically is allowed to go up there. And the only reason that it wouldn't is if it is currently within the last 2 generations, or obviously they'd go by years, but say 2010, the example where if since 2010 there has been no digital version re-released, whether it's a remaster or just a re-release or whatever, that you can pay money to play. Like Legend of Dragoon just came out on PS5 and PS4 as like a original PS1 game, but it's in their premium catalog. There you go. That is in Sony's current digital marketplace. Therefore, it wouldn't be in that museum. And during that time, if it's already in the museum, maybe it goes on hold. It's still uploaded in the museum, but it is not allowed to be played or shown to anybody or whatever, because currently there's a financial way to actually play it, and those companies own it, and that's fair. But if you have something like SimCity SNES, my favorite SimCity to this day, where you cannot play it on anything since definitely 2010. I think it was on the Wii as virtual console, and that was the last time. It's not there. It is available in that museum, and you can play it there then, because it is hit that age, and it's just a free thing because it's a game from 1993. Let's face it, a few thousand people will go play it. If they really want to make money off it, then Nintendo or EA or whoever has the rights, or both of them, would get together and be like, here, let's put it on Switch Online, or here, let's put it on the eShop for $5. Let's put it on every store for $5. Who cares? Like, they do whatever they're going to do. That seems like the perfect, at least to me, way to tackle all of this. But of course, the legislation can only get passed if the powers that be actually pass it. And most of them are actual people that work at all of these companies. And of course, they're all in cahoots, where it's like, of course, we're not going to do that because that's potential funds. And even if the game gets lost, we would rather it get lost than be in someone else's hands, where it can be whatever, and we can't get our money down the road one day or something.
Yeah, like to me, I would go even harsher. If a game has gone 5 years without being on any sort of storefront available outside of the third-party market, like if it's not available, especially now, it has to be a digital storefront, almost guaranteed. But
Oh yeah.
like you can say if it's not still physically in stores, if it's not digitally available anywhere within 5 years, then it becomes available to put on for any service to put it up there for free. And if they are planning on putting it on a storefront, they have to give X amount of notice to the places that it's available. And this would have to be something that's like literally put in place by, I guess if it has to go through the ESA, that's fine. But like, it can't just be like 1,000 websites because then having a track would be impossible. But it should be like like depending on how it works country by country. Like let's say, I'm sure we could figure out a way that it would work here with like the US and Canada. I'm not sure what it would be with Europe. I'm not sure in South America, Australia, Japan, like wherever else. But I'm pretty sure because Canada and the US are basically tied to each other that it would be fine for that. So let's say in that case, we have one front, like one place. This is where, if you're in North America, this is where you get it from. You have to give this place a notice of, let's say, 30 days that you're going to put it up on a storefront, and they have to take it down by that date. And then there's also, I guess, a little note in there, but like, hey, if you don't put it on that storefront within a week, they can put it right back up on their side, because clearly if you're just screwing around with it so that people can't put it on a shelf, then, that's not good. But like, the same goes in the opposite direction. Like, it shouldn't be difficult to write out a thing like, hey, if these people don't take it down and you have proof that it's up there, then yeah, you can take this to task. Like, you can do that as long as you have proof that you've given them notice. Whatever else. Like, I'm not a legal expert, but I can't imagine stuff like that is too difficult to draw out. It's more just, there's a lot of like little bits of language here and there that obviously is a lot more complicated than that. But like the basic fundamentals of this, it shouldn't be too difficult to go through. But like, I get it for games that are pretty recent. Like, I wouldn't imagine seeing, I don't know, like a PS3 game up there immediately, right? Like, it's different compared to, say, like an NES game that no one has played in 30 years, is never going to be available. It should just be like that to put it up on a front and people can play it. Like, if you want to go and play Burger Town, you want to go and play Marble Madness, like, it shouldn't be difficult to do that if they're not available anywhere. It's kind of ridiculous that doesn't happen, because this mostly isn't the case with movies or books, which also leads into the argument of, again, the argument comes out that, oh, well, this might take people away from buying games. Really? Because if that's the case, the book industry and the film industry would have been dead ages ago. Because
100%.
the library would have killed books sales, and back in the day, video rental stores would have killed movie theaters. They would have killed like VHS purchases, DVDs, like all that. They would have died out a long time ago. We all know this, in the same way that you could also take out CDs at the library if you want to listen to music. Like, these all existed for the longest time before. Why is it that video games is the one thing? This is the one thing that I note every fucking time when it comes to how politicians treat it, when it comes to how the general public treat it. Why is it that video games is the one piece of media in this entire world that doesn't have the same pathway that everything else does? I don't understand it. I know a large portion of it before used to be because in the 90s, most people that were playing video games were not adults. We understand that then. This is 2023. Most people that are in their 40s and 50s now are gamers too.
Oh, yeah.
This is not we're grandfathering things out now. No, we have people in politics today that are playing Madden, Call of Duty, Minecraft, Fortnite. It's happening. Thank you, asshole, with a really loud bike out there in the background. This is the problem in summer. We got to have the window open. Explain to me, video game industry, what you have to be doing, because it isn't a one-way street. It's not just politics. It's you idiots too. What is it that you are doing that's also holding this industry back? Because we already know what the politicians are doing, because we still see to this day guys like Donald Trump talking about how games cause violence. We're still acting like it's 1990, when back in the day. We're still acting like it's 2001 when Jack Thompson was talking shit about Grand Theft Auto 3. It's never changed. We figured them out for the longest time. We ignore them. What the fuck are you guys doing that's holding this back too? Apart from the obvious, which is fucking us out of our money like you've done forever.
Yeah. I think they're doing that.
Because it's frustrating. Like, we're all sitting there like, and again, am I sitting here saying I'm going to play all of these things? No, of course not. Most of us aren't. But for the 30 people that on a get like around the entire world that on a random Thursday are going to want to play Mario is Missing for whatever reason, why can't they?
Yeah. Yeah, and I thought you made a good point there with like the age of a game, because it's like you wouldn't expect something on PS3 to be put into this service. It's so easy to figure this out where it's like the game has to be at least 20 years old from when it was originally released, plus it's not available on a current digital storefront, and that's it. And those are the two credentials, and that's it. Like
And
no,
again, like all you have to do is write some sort of bit in the legislature on this. Just say, hey, if you're planning on putting this onto a storefront, give X place notice so that they have time to take it down and put it on your storefront. No problem.
yeah, that's it. It's easy. And like you still hold the rights. It's not like you've lost the rights to the property. It's just it's available, and it's like a museum kind of thing. Like it's meant to be like history. And you made a great example of somebody who was like when they were a kid, they'd played like Burger Time or something like that. Like it's usually people just going back and looking like you would in a museum. You go see something either from your past or even from before your time to see it. And video games are different where you can't walk into a museum and here it's all just shown. Like you can't see an image of it and be like, "Oh, cool." Like they have movie history, they have a like movie museum. You can go to film festivals where you see really old movies and all that kind of stuff. Like it's just not something that they I get why they didn't think of it in the 90s and the 80s for video games. It
Oh yeah,
seemed
like
like
when we're
a
not
kid's
working with
toy.
digital fronts the way that we do now, like it's totally different.
Yeah. But now it's gone all digital. All like let's face it, almost probably not every game, but a large majority of the games that people have heard about are available digitally because they were ripped and made into ROMs and ISOs and all of that at some point because people were doing this because they had no way to play these games already at the end of the 90s. And obviously, they're all somewhere on the internet. Every single one of these games is almost available. And nobody's sitting here and saying, well, I shouldn't have to pay for Tears of the Kingdom. I should be able to just play the ROM or whatever file it would be at this point of this new game. And it's like, no, that's a new thing that just came out. And instead of paying for it, you're taking it. No one's fighting for that because, of course, no, you wouldn't win that. How would you even explain that? Oh, I guess your friend came back.
No, it's a different one.
Uh, they're friends. They're looking for each other, and they keep
Yeah, they're
missing
both
each
pieces.
other.
They're both assholes. I know. But like here's an interesting thing too. Like if you're on the developer side or if you're on the publisher side, let's say the site exists and you have to have register an account because obviously we don't want this to be just a free roam site where suddenly bots can take this over. So let's say you have to register an account on it. And the second you download a game, like it ties it to your account, so you don't have to like go through the process of getting it again. Like you can just access it easily like that. If you as a publisher, would you not like the idea of this site tracking stats for games as a metric for you to be able to look at and go, huh, a lot of people seem to be really interested in Chrono Trigger. I know, right? What a shock square. And them go, huh, we have empirical data that shows that like it's constantly in the top 10 of downloaded games each month. We should probably look into potentially either re-releasing it on something or even making a new one. If you're a game company, is that not useful information to you?
That is. Actually, I hadn't even thought of that. Like, I knew that they would be like, oh, look, people are getting hyped about Mario RPG or whatever. And it's like, oh, people are playing that. But the site itself or the museum or the databank, whatever you'd call it, would have stats. And it's not like these companies with their own games inside of it wouldn't have access to those stats. Of course they would. There'd be some sort of thing where either they can see it themselves or they can reach out to the museum and see the stats where it's like, of the games that I currently own, what are people playing? Oh, look, everybody's playing the original Prince of Persia. Oh, look, everybody's really into the old school version of Pac-Man. Maybe that version was the best.
I don't know who has the rights for it, but like if you suddenly go on this site one day and you track like what the top 100 is, and you see that Booger Man on the Sega Genesis is like in the top 50 and it's been consistently there for a while, you're like, huh, that's weird. We wouldn't have expected that game to be doing so well. All of a sudden you're like, Maybe we should just put it on a storefront and see what it does.
Yeah.
Like just
and then
like give a call, like I don't know who has the rights for it, but like give a call to, I don't know, Nintendo or somebody and be like, hey, we want to put this on your storefront. Like, what do we got to do for that?
Yeah. Easy. Put it on there. We're going to take 30%. Okay, cool. Here it is. Here's our game. Like, it is so easy, and
it's
from
no
a
effort too.
standpoint,
Like we're not asking for people to remaster it or remake it. We're just saying, and even if you don't have the code anymore, someone does. The ROM exists.
Yeah.
Like just tell Nintendo, hey, download it off of this website. Just throw it on there.
Yeah, that's the best part when these companies say like, "Oh, we wanted to really re-release this game, but we lost the code." Have you checked the internet? Everybody has the code.
Like I know they're gonna say, well, it's not the original like code and like the data and everything. And it's like, okay, fine, but there's still a ROM. Like you can put a ROM on something.
Yeah,
it's not
and
hard.
You can probably play around with that, or at least work from there. I'm sure you can get a bunch of the code back from the ROM. Yeah, it's not gonna be the exact same. You'll have to do a bit of work. Boo hoo.
Yeah, like, the developer, like, don't you know to build a Raspberry Pi?
Yeah, just build a Raspberry Pi. Buy a Steam Deck. You can get them pretty cheap. Like, just buy a Steam Deck. Put them. They're probably on there. Oh, yeah. No, this is an industry that's like obviously one of my favorite hobbies of all time, and I love being able to talk about it in this podcast. I love being able to talk it with my friends at the bar. I love being able to play it. I love being able to play it with my friends and just watch YouTube videos about it. All of it. I love the industry. And then there's moments where I'm just like, man, this industry is broken. Like nobody thought about this and made it work. No one did.
Is it crazy to think about how every place in the world that has an interest in rock music, they have a classic rock radio station somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
You have countless theaters out there that will show classic films. People constantly talk about your Psychos and your like Reservoir Dogs and your like, you go back to TV stuff. Like I have family that just nonstop talk about Columbo and Perry Mason. And you like all of this old stuff. There are literal television stations, either on satellite and sometimes even cable, that are just devoted to showing one show 24/7.
Yep.
The
I have two of those running in my house.
industry does not have anything remotely like any of these things.
Yeah, nothing like that at all.
The closest we get is when they decide to put a plastic box that has 30 games on it. That's it.
Out of the tens of thousands. Yeah, tens of thousands of games that exist. And yeah, you can get some very easily, those 30. And then after that, you can't.
There are a total of 1,753 Super Nintendo games.
Wow.
There are 21 on the Super Nintendo Classic. Do the math.
Wow.
It's a little off.
Yeah, it's a little broken.
There is no reason why a game that I'm sure no one even knows if they have the rights to anymore can be put on some sort of a digital download base for free, no charge, no ads anywhere, no money changing hands, and there's no issue. There's no reason that shouldn't be happening. And I don't know what it's going to take. I think it's probably going to take a lot of lobbying from our part as consumers.
Oh, yeah.
And it's honestly why I've chosen to not buy any of those classics. I've not chosen to get the Nintendo Online Expansion Pass because I don't feel like supporting the companies that do it nonchalantly. Because to me, I think they should be doing better than that. I don't care if it's difficult. If it's difficult, you have a lot of money, you can do it. I don't see what's so difficult about having a few people on the side work on specifically that thing. I don't care if it takes them 3 years. Don't care. And if you're like, well, we can't pay someone for 3 years to basically like try to put 100 games together in a package. Okay, Nintendo, I'll just use the example. You'll make more money than you'll be paying that guy in the next 3 years from Tears of the Kingdom tomorrow. You'll be fine. You're good. Yeah. You're good. Maybe here's an idea also. Maybe if you, I don't know, stop spending nearly so much fucking money on advertising that you don't need to do. Maybe here's a crazy idea. Maybe if you took a pay cut because you don't need to make more than $400,000 a year, you know, maybe just maybe if you weren't such a greedy piece of shit. I know I'm asking a lot here. Maybe if you weren't such an asshole, this would be affordable. And even then, it still is affordable, but it's because you also have a bunch of shareholders that are no fucking different than you that also think that the second that a profit margin has not gone the same way it did the last quarter, that all of a sudden you guys are failing. Because again, I love this story. Here's a great example of why business is ridiculous. So back in the day, I don't know, remember if it was the I think it might have been the LA Dodgers at the time by this point. This is in the 60s or in the Sandy Koufax days. I believe it's the GM goes after the playoffs where they didn't make the playoffs that year. Their pitcher, Sandy Koufax, their star, went down with an injury. They didn't make the playoffs that year. And he walks in at the end of the season to the owner and he's like, well, you know, it was a rough year. We'll get Koufax back next year and, you know, we'll be ready to go. And the owner goes, what are you talking about? We lost $2 million this year. And you're thinking $2 million isn't that big a deal. This is in the 60s. Around that time, the number that I remember hearing when the guy who was telling the story said it, he said, you know, you probably could have paid for the Dodgers maybe somewhere around like between 10 and 20 million for the Dodgers back then. So you lost $2 million. And the GM like has a heart attack. He basically stumbles into another guy's office being like, we're going to have to sell. I'm going to have to fire a bunch of people. We're going to have to like trade Koufax. Like, I don't know what we're going to do. And the guy just looks at him. He's like, you fucking idiot. It's like, what did he say? He's like, we said we lost $2 million. He's like, last year when we won the World Series, the company made $4 million. What he's saying is instead of making $4 million this year, we only made $2 million. That is business in a nutshell.
Oh, yeah.
It's not that they didn't make money. It's that they didn't make the money that they said they were going to make.
Yeah.
Or the money that they thought they were going to make. It's why we see all the time with these companies when they lay off a bunch of people. Oh, you know, we had to make cuts because, you know, our profits aren't this, and yet they're making record profits, but their margins are not what's right.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It's insane to me that a lot of people don't see this for what it is. The casual gamer is never going to do this, but like, you know, I say it so many times here until I'm red in the face, and I know it doesn't mean anything anymore, but like, we need to stop supporting this shit. It's why I don't pre-order almost ever anymore. It's why I generally don't buy DLC unless I feel like it's absolutely deserved. It's why I don't even pay full price for most games anymore. I generally will wait until they're half off now because I don't feel like most companies have earned that from me anymore. And I'm sure people are going to say, well, you know, back in the day, it used to be $69.99 back then, and it's been like that forever with the way inflation's going. You should be paying more. Sure, I'm okay with understanding that logic, but I can't support good practices. And going back to the topic at hand, there is no reason for me to ever spend money on Nintendo Switch Expanse, the expansion pack, when they're charging me it may not be a lot of money, but it's a considerable amount of money for such a small amount of value. Because I don't care what they say about the 20 games that they've put on N64 wise, like, oh, well, if you bought these third party, it would be X amount of dollars. I know that, but I'm not buying third party. I'm buying for some data that costs you like 10 cents to send to me. You don't need to charge me that much. And if you're going to charge me that much, I expect more. And if you're not going to deliver me more, you ain't getting my 5 to 10, 20 bucks, whatever it may be.
Yeah. Especially as a subscription service where it's not even like you have the games, you have to continuously pay.
Yeah. Because I mean, with like something like Plus, there are games that are often not that are full price. You get them and you keep them as long as you keep that going. That's different. With Switch Online, like, it's a game that is not for sale anymore. And if it would be extremely expensive in a physical format. It comes back to that thing too of like, there's no way of getting around this, I don't think, because it would just be a nightmare to write up legislation for, write up law for. But like, if people could sell their digital copies of things, what would that look like? Like, how would that completely change the market?
Yeah. They figured out returns, which I never thought would actually happen.
That's true.
For digital things.
It would never happen. They would never allow people to sell their digital copies. That is a can of worms that no one wants to open. But like, if that alone was opened up, the third-party market would severely go down for physical copies because they'll realize, oh wait, shit. If I'm going to charge $150 for Super Mario RPG for Super Nintendo, I'm not going to make that because someone's going to be like, fuck that. I can just literally not leave my couch and download and buy it off of some guy for $5.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
But there's no way of doing it. So it was, I don't even know how that would be possible now. It would just you would have to completely rewrite how your storage unit works. It would just not work. So like it would be something that we do later in the future, but I don't think it would ever happen.
No, getting these companies on board, even if it was like Valve was like, hey, we're going to do this, like Ubisoft, EA, everyone who's got their games on Steam will be like, I'm sorry, you're going to let them basically trade their games and they take the money and not us? Or it's like, oh, no, you'll get your small cut. It's like, no. We sell the games at our price and that's that. Like they'll all step in.
And I mean, we know even as consumers that we're iffy about that because shit, we were finally getting to a point where people were going to charge money on storefronts for mods like they were doing with, I think, Fallout 4 at the time when this was becoming a thing.
Yeah, I think it was Fallout 4.
And people did not take well to that. So like, if we can't even go well with that format, then there's no goddamn way digital games will be shared like that.
No, not at all.
It's just a shame. I don't know what the solution is. I know what I want the solution to be, but I don't have any sway in the business end of the gaming industry, and I certainly don't have a law degree, so I wouldn't know how to get around that either.
Nope. Looks like we gotta go get law degrees. Ace Attorney. Wait, you played Ace Attorney?
Yeah, all I know is how to point and yell, though.
I mean, that's probably 80% of it.
No. That's being a politician.
Oh, okay. I mean, that could be helpful.
So, I mean, look, I will totally not sail the seven seas as I find my ways around things, but, it's the only other way we can do these things, because if I have no way of getting to it without literally, like, having to take a fucking loan out to get these things, people are always going to find ways around it for free, in the same way that we are doing it right now, because there are too many streaming services and people are just illegally taking copies of shows, of films, of all this, because we're right back to where we were back in the day with CDs, with DVDs, because they were charging too much for something that we, like, again, like with the DVD stuff, like I could never imagine, it's why I only have, like, I'm pretty sure I can count on two hands how many DVDs I own, because my brain always went, why would I pay $25-$30 for something I'm going to watch once?
Yeah.
If I really wanted to watch it that badly, I watched it in theaters. And back in the day, if I wanted to watch it so badly, I go to a video store because it was cheaper.
Yeah, the rentals.
Now that they don't exist really anymore, well, I guess I'll have to find other ways. Because I'm certainly not spending, I don't even know what DVDs cost. I haven't been in a DVD store in ages. I'm sure it's probably no different, but still, I ain't walking in and paying $30 to watch, I don't know, fucking Final Fantasy Spirits Within.
That one I would drop that.
You got to pay me $30 minimum at least to start watching that.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. For me, it's basically if a game isn't available digitally and like it just hasn't been for a while, like I've got no other choice. And I'm going to go and I'm going to find it myself then, because I want to play, SimCity SNES. I want to play Xenogears. I want to play Xenosaga. I want to play Radiata Stories. All of these. And
I don't think any of us have a problem if we're talking about, because I know Switch has an emulation scene. I know that if people can get Tears of the Kingdom and it's working pretty goddamn well on emulator for free, yeah, that's an issue if you're Nintendo. I get that. I don't think it's an issue if we're talking about, I don't know, fucking Mario was missing. I'll just keep going back to that. Yeah. I don't see the issue there. So no, I don't see why the ESA can come together and go, all right, we really don't want to bother ourselves with this, so let's just let somebody else handle it. And if we suddenly want to put X game on there, we just shoot them a message, like give them a phone call, shoot them an email, throw a letter at them, and just say, hey, take it off here by X or we'll sue you.
Yep. Ay. What an industry, man. What an industry.
It's an industry. It's like the wrestling industry. I'm a big wrestling guy. I fucking love wrestling. I fucking hate the wrestling industry at the same time. I mean, granted, that's like almost everything. I love hockey. I fucking hate hockey. I love baseball. I fucking hate baseball. I love anime. Yeah, actually, I still kind of hate anime. Not nearly as much as the rest of them, though. Anime, I kind of just accept it. It's just dumb as shit. But yeah, with everything else, there's so much of it that's just corporate greed, and it just drives you nuts because you just want to sit down and enjoy something. And as kids, it's easy to do so because you don't look at that. But as adults, it's impossible not to notice how we're being taken advantage of, how companies are literally spending more time with lawyers and more money with lawyers, spending it trying to just deal with something that literally, if they just left alone, would cost them nothing. They would lose nothing. In fact, they probably stand more to gain than lose.
Yep, definitely.
Like, again, if Marble Madness is suddenly on a shelf that people can just readily get for free, explain to me who loses. No one.
Yeah, there's no one. There's just nobody.
And again, Square, if someone puts Chrono Trigger on something and you're not going to put it up anywhere, believe me, you might see some interest in there still. But you're going to do what you always do, which is put your hands in your pockets, whistle, and put out another crappy Final Fantasy mobile game and make a shit ton of money because, again, we as consumers are also pretty goddamn stupid too at times. So unfortunately, it goes both ways. The industry is really, really ignorant, stubborn, and stupid. We also have plenty in our ranks that do the exact same thing by giving their money to things they shouldn't either. So, you know, the industry taketh and we giveth, and it's an endless circle.
Yeah, that's our lives. That's just how it is.
Well, other than that, you got any last thoughts before we kick this can down the road to I don't know, probably bitch about another day?
I mean, I'm still going to think about it and bitch about it, but as for the actual episode today, no, I don't have anything else to add. I think we've covered it all.
Yeah, just make another Chrono game, Square. That's all. Yeah, that's all.
That just bothers me. Where is that? Just come on, Square. Come on. Where?
Well, as always, this was I know because we ended with bashing Square again. It must be a Cartridge and Quarters episode, but this was not Cartridge and Quarters. This was the PixelPlay Podcast. Thank you so much for checking out this episode. Again, like I said, thank you to all the new people that subscribed. If you are watching on YouTube and you haven't already, why aren't you? Like, seriously, have you seen the content that we totally do now, aka like the podcast that we do every week Wednesdays at noon, and the now 2 solo videos I've done in the last couple of months? So, you know, we're making progress, right? I know down the line we are looking at potentially doing more things, but it's a matter of figuring out what that looks like, and also how to put that together, because, I mean, Kaylan's a dad. Both me and Chris have jobs and other things that we also try to do on the side, and we also, you know, we don't want to spend every waking day making stuff, so at the same time, like, if Look, we're not making money off of this. If somebody else wants to do something, go right ahead. That's why other places have more subs than we do. But hey, if you're not subscribed already, why don't you? There's plenty of stuff going on here. Again, also, you got the Linktree/PixelPlay Podcast if you want to go see where everything is, our socials, where you can find our audio show. If you want to link to the Discord, if you want to chat with us and basically, you know, talk about how the game industry sucks, we can happily do that all day, every day with you guys. And again, wherever you may be listening this, if it's on an audio platform, if you can give us a rating, please do so. If you are watching this on YouTube, like I said, sub to the channel and obviously like the video as well. And leave a comment on what you think, whether it's about, you know, Chris was talking about Cult of the Lamb or, oh my God, what was the other game again? The Wandering Village, I think?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then obviously if you want to talk about Trails into Reverie, if you want to talk about all that stuff, you can do that in the comments. And if you also just want to talk about what you think about preservation of games, putting these things up on storefronts, like your ideas of what you think that would look like. Or again, like I said, if you just want to trash the industry, go ahead and do it. Hell, you want to trash us? Go ahead and do that. I don't care. I had people trashing me in my recent open world video, my recent Trails video has a couple of people trashing my thoughts in there. I don't care. It's the internet. I don't give a shit. I can say whatever I want. But yeah, with that being said, thank you so much for checking out this episode. We'll see you next week, Wednesdays at noon Eastern, like we always are. Enjoy the rest of your day, evening, night, I don't know, whatever it may be where you're at. We see that there are people that don't just watch North America. There's somebody probably watching in Australia, and it's like, you're waking up now. I don't know why you're listening to us right at first thing in the morning, but hey, I'm not judging. In fact,
also,
I'm happy.
How's winter? I hope your winter's fine.
Winter in Australia. So what, like, all the giant animals are just now got like a covering of snow before they kill you? Is that what it is?
I don't know.
I have no idea. I don't feel like finding out. Australia seems like a deadly place normally. But anyways, thank you so much for checking out this episode, everybody. Hope you had a good one today. Hope you enjoyed the episode, and we will see you later. Bye-bye for now.